You have to say, I'm just going to make a movie in the best way that I can with what I have to work with.
I want to hug you right now.
And that's what you guys are doing.
That's exactly it. And I know you're probably saying that out loud, like telling it to yourself as much as you are anybody else, because that is a constant struggle.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Messed Up Movies Podcast, here for a Filmmaker Friday. Very excited to welcome our friend, fellow local filmmaker, Jason Zink. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Would you care to introduce yourself, the movie you've made, and where people can find you online?
Okay, so I'm Jason Zink. You can find me on Facebook because I'm old. Weird on Top Pictures for Instagram and Facebook. I don't have the most active social media presence, but I'm trying. And we recently released a movie, or it's coming out right now, called Looky-loo. And we're actually working on the sequel, part 2, right now.
Amazing news. You guys will recognize super producer Heath here with us as well. Actually, you've joined the Looky-loo team. Is this correct?
Well, I don't know that I'm like an official team member.
You're like a barnacle.
I am part like a barnacle. I'm like,
you're a barnacle suctioning to the successful yacht that Jason's building.
So Jason and I met at a film festival in South Carolina last year, and his movie Looky-loo was there, and I fucking fell in love with it. And then I just sort of barnacled myself to him, held him hostage when we were on like this quest to go find a drink or food, and we were
God, yeah.
I don't know if we have to tell this story, but this was like our bonding moment where I'm like, this theater was like an abandoned mall, Dawn of the Dead style.
Very much so.
It was a really dystopian environment, but the film festival was great. Like the theater was fun. People were there.
The art was great. It was more of the tragedy surrounding
it was zombie mode if you stepped outside of the theater. And I had went by this bar and I was like, hey, I know this place. Let's go take a break and grab a drink, and so I could suck up to him and see if I could get in his good graces. And it didn't work at the beginning because I was like, I think we could just walk there. We could go. It's like 98 degrees outside.
It was really hot. It's South Carolina.
It was like May.
That's what I was gonna say.
Perfect for the average goer of a horror convention. They love outdoor heat.
To be fair, you weren't wrong. We could walk there. It just took. I just
took him the wrong way.
I mean, in theory, you can walk anywhere. It is possible if you have the gumption.
Right. Yeah. So had we went left instead of right where I took him, we would have gotten there. But anyway, we've gotten to be friends over the course of it, and so he's made a great film, and he's making a part 2. And I don't know, are you thinking about part 3 still?
Well, we want to do a trilogy, but we want to see what the response is. I mean, if people watch part 2 and they don't give a shit about part 3, we're not going to do it. But but we're hoping that they give a shit.
Tell that to Kevin Costner and his 4-5-part Horizon series. He's going for it. He's doing
I love that you're saying that at this phase we should be setting ourselves up with the same expectations as Kevin Costner.
100%.
Kevin Costner got to do it.
Yeah.
I think he once fingered Julia Roberts. I should get to do it. It was a different time back then. So why Looky-loo? Let's just start here at the start of your journey, right? So,
well, it's not the start. It's not the start.
Well, not the start, but the start of the Looky-loo journey, right?
Sure.
So, why was Looky-loo the idea that seemed appealing to you guys as independent filmmakers?
So the interesting thing about it is that it wasn't what we were trying to make. Like when we first started, we wanted to make a horror comedy that was playing off the hashtag van life craze. That was the whole idea. But we knew we were going to need to use like GoPros and cell phones, so we were going to test in low light. So I started walking around town at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning by myself, just filming down alleys and stuff. And as we were doing it, and I was reviewing the footage and sending it to Nolan, this idea just I was like, this is kind of creepy.
Nolan, your co-producer, co-writer?
Yes, Nolan Mayo.
I am becoming a real creep. This could be the thing.
Yeah. And so then I sent him a text. I said, hey, like, I thought maybe we could shoot 2 films this summer. What if we shoot, the Van Death movie, and then we also do this other project, which in my mind was a little more like Elijah Wood's Maniac remake.
Yes.
But it was just low budget, and would just feel very real, very grounded. But Nolan misunderstood the text, and he thought I was saying that the guy was a filmmaker documenting the world around him. Added this extra layer, and funny enough, he tells it better than I would, but he was kind of like deflated because I was like, oh, that's not what I was thinking at all. But then over the next couple days,
You came around on it?
I kept thinking about it, and I was like, actually, that's a better fucking idea. So the idea kind of came from neither of us and both of us at the same time, and we kind of fell into it. And now, like, we're in love with it. We feel like this is what we were meant to do.
So much that you're doing 2 sequels.
Yes, exactly. And this is the first time I've ever wanted to make a sequel to anything. Like, I made a joke about doing Straight Edge Kegger 2 on April Fool's Day a few years ago, and people still message me about it, and I'm like, that's never going to happen.
Straight Edge Kegger 2, was that was not your first feature?
No, this is a long story, but long story short, my first feature is Buried. It's called When I Die, and it's not horror. It's like it's a mockumentary about my hypothetical suicide. So I'm dead before the movie starts, and it's like a mockumentary that my friend's trying to discover why I killed myself.
It's like The Big Chill, but
so that's the movie that we shot.
It's The Lovely Bones.
Yes, yeah. That's the movie that we shot for less than $1,000 in college to kind of prove that we could tell a story and make a movie, right? And then after that, we started dipping into my favorite genre, which is horror, and we made a horror anthology called Night Terrors.
Nice.
Which actually got buried by a really shitty distributor, and we just got the rights back a year and a half ago, and now Scream Team Releasing just did a re-release of that. So
awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, my first real movie, it's hard to define. I guess my first real movie might be Straight Edge Kegger, but Night Terrors is probably
a lot of people will recognize Straight Edge Kegger. That's become sort of a cult classic now.
Oh man, I don't know about that, but I hope so. I fucking hope.
No, we're on the committee. It happened.
In some communities,
we got
it
the
is.
email.
That's
like especially the punk community, like the underground punk community.
That's
right?
fair. Yeah. We do.
People know it. Yeah.
I'm pleasantly surprised when I hear it brought up. Or like, actually the most humbling and like the funny thing for me is when I'm at a concert with a buddy who was in the movie, and some random person will just walk up to him and be like, hey, I saw you in that fucking movie. Like, that's always nice. I like that.
Fun.
What a cool moment, man.
Yeah, it's nice. And I never say shit. I'm not like, I'm the director. I just
Me too.
I take a sip of my beer and like,
well, that was one of those early Shudder movies.
Yeah.
That got a lot of visibility because people were discovering, oh shit, there's a horror app. An app for horror movies exclusively. And that was one that was early on that platform. So yeah, a lot of people saw it.
I was so excited to be on Shudder when it happened. This was like right when the pandemic was kicking off that I was going to a convention. I had a custom face mask made that says now streaming on Shudder. I didn't even wear it to the convention. I wound up feeling too embarrassed to do it, but
I have a buddy who got A24 tattooed on his calf. And was just so, and he's a filmmaker. I'm not gonna fucking shit on him. You know who you are and what you've done. But he was so despondent because he's like, yeah, I did this, and he like just dreams of being that kind of director. And he's like, one day we were talking, he was so fucking smitten, and he's like, I couldn't even get a retweet, dude.
Oh shit!
So I get it, man. People love it.
Well, he's probably not the first.
Yeah,
I bet.
But he thought. I think in his mind the math was if he gets the A24 tattoo, they're gonna pick up his movie.
Right.
He's like, I can't even get him to put him on an Instagram story. So yeah, I think that's perfectly fine.
Too thirsty.
I would be too.
Yeah.
That's how it goes, man. When you get older, you got to throw more lines.
Well, I hope he doesn't totally regret the tattoo. Like if he hates everything A24 puts out now, that would suck.
Yeah, when A24 eventually has their downfall, their cultural moment, he'll look back and be like, what a fucking fool I am.
Yeah, I hope they never have their she's all that moment. But
oh, it's coming. It's all happening. It came from Marvel.
Downfall.
Marvel's on its way out. Like it'll happen to all of them, right? Younger people are born.
Yeah.
And new things become cool, and then all the shit that we think, they're like, fucking A24, gross. That's like dad music. It's like when you listen to dad music radio now, and it's like Slipknot.
Yeah.
And you're like, can you imagine our dads listening to Slipknot?
How did this happen?
Yeah, Slipknot and Marilyn Manson are like dead. Well, hopefully
classic
not Marilyn
rock.
Manson. But yeah, that's like classic dad rock now, and our kids are like, lame. I only listen to things with hip hop and
when
SpongeBob.
Metallica became classic rock, I knew. It was just how it goes.
Yeah, that's how everything's
inevitable.
I just had a student in one of my classes refer to Korn as classic rock.
Yeah, divorced dad rock, dude. That's what they call it. I follow all the playlists on Spotify. I'm just not divorced yet, but I just like the music. Yeah. I always assume, like A24, I assume someday my wife will grow past me and replace me. But so as you started getting into Looky-loo, right? So when you were attacking this problem, when you guys wrote it initially, what were the parameters that you guys put on the story that we saw translate to film, right? So I got to see it now. And how much of that was something you found through experimentation, and how much of that was something set out at the start of the script, right? Like never really seeing the killer, things like that, right? Without being too spoiler. I don't know how spoilery you want to be. But how much of that is from the page, and how much of that were you guys finding experimenting? Because it feels like a movie where you had opportunities to refine as you went, right?
You're hitting the nail on the head. Like 100%. That's mostly what we did.
Right.
But yeah, not seeing the killer, like only catching him in these like tiny little glances, these glimpses, that was intentional from the beginning. Because to us, it was like, not only do you see a lot of like found footage and mockumentary movies where the killer is literally talking to the camera, right? But our logic was, if this is real, if it's supposed to feel like a real killer, then you don't get to part 2 if he shows himself too much. Like you have to hide him. And Nolan did a lot more research than I did. I'm already pretty knowledgeable about serial killers because I'm like a, true crime junkie a little bit. And so that was very intentional for sure. But then, we kind of played constantly. Like we would ask the actors, like what would creep them out and like what would be, I don't know, their worst fear, I guess. And we just played off of that constantly. And it's funny, in part 2, there's way less, like most of the footage that winds up on the cutting room floor is not experimental. Like it was all scripted, right?
Right.
Part 1, there's so much on the cutting room floor that was just us experimenting.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm talking like at least like 20 hours of footage probably that doesn't make it into the movie.
This could be like a 15-part series.
Oh, it really could be.
But that is, I think, what makes it feel very real, very organic. Like this could have been, he could have been doing this for, what's the timeline even? Like months, years, right?
Yes, yeah. We also wanted to be not specific about where he is and how long this took.
Naturally, he would be getting a lot of video that would not make it into his final cut anyway.
Yeah.
Because we see a corkboard, right, that's kind of empty and then is getting more full. So I was wondering that too. But then at the end, we get a hint that maybe there are kind of cycles to this.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really fun, right? Because one of the things in the movie, I'll be upfront, I fucking hate found footage movies 90% of the time, right? I think it's the biggest crock of shit, right? It's kind of like when movies are like, hey, come to a movie because it's 3D. And I was like, why would I want it to come at me when it's clearly not worth watching 2D, right? Like, it's a gimmick to make movies that suck seem fun, right?
I could go,
of course,
if you want.
No, if you could just point all the cameras here, I'm going to get this on my channel. But as a father, right? Like, what happens is everything you don't like, your kids like.
Sure.
So now my son, he wants to stay up late and watch horror movies with me, and he's like, Dad, I just only like found footage movies. They feel real. And I'm like, this motherfucker. And this came right after, at 4 years old at his birthday, said, I want to have a Star Wars party, but I want everything to be Jar Jar because he's the coolest Star Wars character. Nice. I'm just like, you mother.
That's
so
amazing.
He puts me through my paces. So we've been going back through all these found footage movies, and I have found myself softening.
Okay.
But the hardest thing with found footage is it's a gimmick that wants to make it feel like we're in a scenario. But so much of the edifice of how you have to have the machinations of a plot in a movie happen.
Sure.
Have characters doing things that are so fucking stupid, like in Cloverfield, where the guy literally takes the camera lens first to like bash a monster to death.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever had to sit through. I thought your movie, the kind of commitment to that realism is one of the most fully recognized and seen through found footage journeys I've been on. Like, that among all of them feels the most true to what would happen if you found a serial killer's stash.
Thank you. I mean, that means a lot, honestly, because it is it's hard. Like, we had to work really hard to make it look like we didn't work hard.
Yeah. Right.
That makes sense. And sometimes we'd have to go against our own instincts. Like, even Casey, our sound designer, who's fucking incredible, like, he would be doing things like cross-fading sound between scenes, right? And I'm like, no, this should be a hard cut.
Yeah.
This guy's not good at this. He's not a filmmaker.
Yeah, he's not an editor, right? It's kind of like he's creating his own spank bank, for lack of a more academic term.
But you do just enough to establish that he knows how to use a camera, at least on a consumer level, knows how to use editing equipment on a consumer software on a consumer level. Then he becomes a serial killer.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not the other way around.
See, I would have thought it's the other way, right? Because I think the way I watched it was, this is a guy who does these. And the hardest part for serial killers, right? That's why they all keep trophies. They need that tactile reminder of the power they had over this other thing. So to me, it struck as another way, right?
Oh, really?
Because he's like my aunt. When every time we get together, she's like, hey, I put all of our last family photos from Facebook together with the song We Are Family, and like star wipes everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Because she just wants something that reminds us we're all a more loving family. But that came after the need, right? So I thought the killer probably had kills before and didn't get the sense that he had enough memory of it, or it felt like he was trying to do more than just destroy them, right? It feels like an extra part of his kink is this kind of like art piece to it.
Well, it is.
So it felt like that was something that would have grown out of an earlier kill that didn't fill the Dark Passenger's need to me.
I don't know that I'm going to respond to that.
You don't have to.
But I will say this, that we have little seeds that people, sometimes they pick up on it, sometimes they don't, that shows that it's nonlinear. That like things happen out of order.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So one tiny hint in the movie is he's actually on his editing station on the desk. There's a envelope for Kelly Lou. That's her mail, but we haven't even been introduced to her yet. Right. So like that's kind of hard with a movie that almost has no dialogue, right? Like to communicate that stuff, but there are hints there.
That's cool.
So we don't spell out, you know, when this started and how things get edited together and all that
Which
stuff.
is how a real documentary is.
Right.
Typically. You know, you're crafting it for a narrative, not necessarily a timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
But something...
Yeah,
go
that's
ahead.
the hard problem with true crime documentaries now, is they're all like 3-episode miniseries. And you're like, there's maybe 1 hour of shit I want to see in these.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing 3 episodes, right? And it's all this extra horseshit that you don't need, right? Your movie put all those questions in my mind, gave me all of this extra things to think about as I'm kind of walking in this killer's brain. So in a weird way, I think the way you guys set it up becomes this brilliant, almost forcing the audience to participate in writing the story.
Absolutely.
Because
so.
you're sitting there and in the voids, right? I think there are some audiences who would watch something like this and they'll start to turn off. They'll be disinterested, right?
Sure.
But if you're in it, those are the times where your brain inherently is going to try to fill quiet, right? That's just not something we see enough in movies.
Yeah.
And I think it starts putting you, even if you really don't fucking want to or are uncomfortable, deeper and deeper and deeper in this guy's head.
I love that. I love that reading of it. I will say we've been pleasantly surprised by the response so far from reviewers and just the audience. They're getting it more than I thought they would.
Yeah.
I kind of thought people would be turning it off, saying it's a bore, or shitting on us, saying like we're just sick fucks or something. And it really hasn't been that way. And I've been pleasantly surprised, especially by female viewers and reviewers. Like, they seem to get it more than anybody because this is their real...
Because they kill people all the time.
No, because this is their real fucking life that they have to deal with. So it's really... It hits them in a specific way that not everybody would get. I will say the thing you guys haven't gotten to see much of yet is he does take the filmmaking very seriously. He, on some level, thinks he's Spielberg, but he is not.
We get a sense of that at the end of the film. We kind of touch a lot on that.
Okay.
Right? That there's something extra that he... Again, it's more that this is a collaboration between artists than an exchange of flesh, right? So I did get some of that at the end where you're like, oh, again, it leaves you excited to do it again. Which I think is an awesome thing to add in too.
Right. You see the escalation. And not only is he escalating in terms of his crimes and his obsession, he's escalating his skill as a filmmaker.
Yeah, as a storyteller. I don't know how many people are going to pick up on it, but actually the entire movie for part 1 was shot on a GoPro until that very last sequence that he finds a new person
because
to
he
focus
zooms
on.
in. You can see he zooms
It's the
in.
first time we've zoomed in the entire film.
And it felt like the first time we heard him talk. So you see this, there's more authorship in that moment.
So we're very excited about part 2. Like we're further along than we thought.
He said it sucks,
we
but
were
I
gonna do.
can't wait to see it.
I edited the trailer. Let me tell you, it was tough to find a lot of I couldn't believe it because Jason sent me part 2 and I'm like, holy shit, this is great. And I was like, do you need notes? Because there's maybe like one or two things that I could see. And he's like, did you read the script? I'm like, no. He goes, go read the script first. And I went back and I was like, shit, there's only like half the movie here. I can't believe that it was like that put together.
Yeah.
And only maybe like half of the movie was done. I thought you were pretty much done.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe there's a couple things that are maybe missing.
Oh,
like,
no.
Like half. So it's going to be amazing. Part 2 is going to be
Well,
great.
Thank you, man.
Let me hone in on this because I think this is one of the more interesting things to talk to an independent filmmaker who makes this kind of movie, right? Mm-hmm. I think there are things in the independent horror bag that people grab really easy, right? The shitloads of fake blood. There are some tits in there, right? These are classic horror movie pillars that people want to see that will help kind of assuage maybe some performances or light or sound, whatever.
Sure.
How tempted were you? What was your battle like mentally and at a soul level as you were starting to do this to be like, fuck, dude, we might need like a more heavy score. We might need some voiceover, right? To like pick up and like fill in this guy's thoughts. Was there moments where you found weakness and wanted to drift away from the core mission of the movie and add some of those? And how did you overcome that in the process?
There was an acknowledgement pretty early on between Nolan and I that this was going to be a tough journey, that like we were gonna need to make ourselves uncomfortable, that
Commitment,
we were gonna,
yes.
yeah, and we're gonna need to commit hard and like not let the audience off. But some of it actually just comes from stuff that I think is just like cheap, or I don't like to see in movies. Like, I'm not saying that like an animal death doesn't have a place in a movie. Sometimes it can.
It's the thing I hate the most in horror movies now is they just kill a dog at the start of every movie.
Because it's going to fuck you up. Like, it's going to upset people. And
but it's not even a dog like we played fetch with yet. Like, they're just throwing him on the board.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just a thing they do in horror movies now all the time.
Even a movie that I liked for the most part, like Talk to Me with like the dying kangaroo, I was just like, what the fuck is the point of this? Like, what are we doing? So
the kangaroo's not over here doing truth or dares. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
So some of that was already just like, we're not going to do it, but we also wanted to kind of, so a thing that was important, I'm speaking for Nolan a little bit, but he kind of wanted to put the thumbs in the eyes of true crime junkies. Not to say, like I said, I'm one. So, but I know that it's kind of sick, and we're like being voyeuristic, looking into people's lives, and there's like real trauma and loss at the heart of these stories. And so he was like, we can't cheapen that. Like, we need to do this in a way that's dark, that scares people, but it's not exploitative. Mm-hmm. And so once we both established we were on the same page with that, we weren't tempted, honestly. We acknowledged, man, it'd be a lot easier if we did this shit. Yeah. We had a lot of those talks, but we never were tempted to stoop to that level. Yeah,
because it to me, it felt a lot like the cutaways from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Yep. 100%.
Just without that connective, like, follow Henry around in his day-to-day life.
Sure. Yeah.
And so when I was watching, I wondered, I was like, how tempted were you to give Looky-loo a face and a voice and show us that this dude works at, you know, Jiffy Lube, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there had to be these temptations of like, man, that'd get us an extra 1.5 minutes of footage, and it'd be really easy to explain something away. So I wondered how much of that you were going through.
The one thing that almost did happen is Nolan, luckily he doesn't work there anymore, but he used to work at like a mill, and he would be in this big like heavy equipment with literally like flames going up on the side of the vehicles and stuff, like,
and you're like, that shit's just cool.
And and he was just like, I picture him to be working this kind of job, and then in his free time he's an artist.
Is that what we're learning? Are you outing it?
No, you know,
he's Looky-loo.
Well, I mean, is Nolan really Looky-loo, and he's using an artistic front?
Actually, you know what's funny? It's a good thing you brought this up. Is so I'm not an actor,
right?
So like, I do not think I'm an actor.
You're not one of those actors who's like, I'll settle to direct.
No, very much no. I'm very comfortable behind the camera.
Yeah.
But Nolan is not only a skilled writer, he's also a skilled actor. Yeah. And so the voice of Looky-loo is Nolan.
Nice.
And I'm the guy with the camera and the hands and all that.
But don't sell yourself short, because you are doing a performance.
That is true.
It's totally choreographed. So you're actually pulling double duty. You're cinematographer, you're the director, and you're the main actor too.
It can be tough. Sometimes I get upset with myself sometimes because I'll get so fixated on one aspect that I can't focus on another one. You know what I mean?
You have to
Eternal
do
struggle, man.
You
Yeah.
have to do 3 things at the same time.
Yeah,
and you're producing it.
How
as well,
were
so.
you? How were you monitoring the choreography of your footage as you were filming it? Because if it was GoPro, I'm assuming you weren't watching it as you were going, were you?
Sometimes we were, sometimes we weren't. But most of the time I was actually looking at that tiny little LCD.
So you had it on a stick.
Yeah.
Watching. Okay.
Well,
so I wonder because your hands pop in the shots a lot.
Sorry, hold on. So, gosh, I'm mixing up part 2 and part 1 now.
Yeah.
Sorry. So in part 1, we used a lot of chest mount.
Chest mount. Okay.
That was a big thing.
Well, that's what I
And
thought.
so
If it's chest mount, how the fuck are you seeing?
I would basically have to like do this
Right.
a lot of times and kind of cheat how I was walking
the
around.
old
and shit.
cleavage lift.
Yeah. And sometimes we'd even have to put something underneath it to like raise it up a little bit and get it in the right spot, that kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, part 1 there was a lot more of like we'd take one, we'd review, and then we'd make adjustments and go back.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
kind
a
of
pain in
like
the ass. Yeah.
DPing in your mind's eye only.
Sure. Yeah.
That's fucking wild, man. Because that's the thing. It feels really crisp. Like where the camera lands feels like it's one of those. I started to pick up the cadence of like what you were stopping on and when. And it felt very specific. And I was like, how the fuck is he watching this, though?
We're just that
Like,
good.
because I knew you're just that good, right? It just comes
No, I'm just
natural
kidding.
for some of us. Yeah.
Just
So I was like,
kidding.
I know there's no way you have a monitor somewhere.
It was always on a wide lens though. It's like
Yeah.
a linear lens. It's not fisheye, but it's a very wide lens that we use for part 1. So it made it so usually I'm like if I'm this close, I know I'm getting X amount of
Relatively,
frame or
yeah.
whatever. You know, that kind of
Well,
thing.
because I was like, how many times did you come back and you're like, nailed it? And like, the top of the frame is right there on their forehead. And you're like, fuck!
Actually, you know, it's a funny one. It showed so much that there was this time. Okay, so we rented like an Airbnb or a Vrbo one time. Everything else was like natural people's houses, but we rented this one in Indianapolis to make it convenient for Kelly to be nearby. But we didn't ask them ahead of time if we could shoot in there. We just thought we'll shoot mostly inside. It'll be fine. So I'm wearing a ski mask.
Your fucking red jacket.
I'm filming her through the window, just eating Chinese food or whatever we got that night. And the neighbors behind me are in their kitchen and they see me. So they start pounding on the door or the window and getting my attention. So I'm like turning over and like being like, no, it's okay. And like lifting up the mask while I'm still filming. So you actually see that shot in the movie, but we had to punch in because on the raw footage, you can see the reflection of the family. Being panicked.
Wow.
Fucking, I love I love the idea of this family that's like, I see a creep looking at a window in a ski mask.
Yeah.
An inherent, like, this guy's ready for some shit to go down. And they're like, I want the smoke. I'll pound on the window.
Yeah, they just pound on
rather
the
than
window.
immediately calling the cops. Like,
Sure.
my wife would never be like, hey, go say something.
Right.
Yeah.
They'd be like, call the fucking
And I was so worried that the cops would show up on
Yeah.
that one. So I ran right inside with her and we stood at the window and ate food together so they could see like, we're friends.
Yeah,
like we're
right.
just playing around.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't look at all like a hostage video. You know what I mean? Yeah, that
That's
probably
fair.
looked totally
I didn't
natural.
Even, that didn't dawn
Eat
on
the
me
fucking
until right
Chinese
now.
food. No. Yeah. Be happy.
Yeah. I'm seeing the opportunity for like now a very meta kind of like take from their perspective.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
This whole kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a rushing nesting doll cuckoo
Yes.
series, right?
Yeah.
People filming others. Yeah, I thought that, but that, yeah, I kept hearkening back to Henry. I think that's the movie I kept falling on a lot as like a spiritual, cousin to this kind of
Sure.
a movie. And so I thought it was really fun how you captured that. Now, approaching doing a sequel to that, right? I haven't seen it. Heath has not shared. I blame him for a lot of stuff.
Well,
he
it's-
has to finish the film.
Yeah, I have to finish it, and the sound
Oh
design.
yeah, so
the
I
sound
blame you
design's
too.
not there.
Yeah, you should finish it.
Yeah,
so
still
that he
working
can
on it.
illegally send it to me. That's the things that I need in life. How tempted were you in part 2 to adjust away from the format
So
and add some of those more
there's more
elements?
to it this time.
Okay.
It all elevates, but we can't break our own rules.
Right.
Like that's how we're looking at it. Like if anything would be non-diegetic or like just wouldn't make sense, we can't do it. I mean, so
Right.
we're sticking to it all the way through, but it's made it a lot harder on part 2 because there's so much more happening and we use different cameras.
Well,
and
also
it's-
you've done an hour and 40 minutes of that in the first one.
Yeah.
So instead of just rehashing all that, you need new kind of voyeur kills.
I think, and hopefully this isn't giving too much away. We'll cut it out if you think it is. But
Okay.
The cool thing to me about part 2 is that the world is aware of the events of part 1.
Yes.
So that
nice.
expands it quite a bit. And then it gets in more to that true crime aspect of it. And, how the culture kind of looks at what's going on in this. So that really takes it to another level. It's cool.
And in part 2, we're almost treating it like part 1 got the treatment that a Serbian film got. Where people are like, this is fucked up, but you should watch it. Like,
You can't even put on your tux and go for a nice $500 plate meal without a Serbian film coming up. It was a scourge.
So yeah, it's already like right from the get-go, we established that, I think, right in the opening scene. And whereas part 1 starts at like a 1 and slowly ratchets up to ending at a 9, we start part 2 at a 10.
Yeah. So just all the way in.
Oh, yeah.
So outside of Looky-loo, right, when you're attacking making this film, right, I think a lot of times independent filmmakers, we're always thinking about how does this one affect the next one to the next one. I know it's hard because you're so locked in on the battle in front of you, right, making any film, right? Any film for any amount of money is a fucking brutal struggle, right?
Yeah.
Have you had time now to think about, in a post-Looky-loo and Looky-loo Part 2 world, what comes next? What kind of stories do you want to tell next? Have you guys thought of any of what comes after making the feature, right?
Yeah, I think for us, well, short answer, we wanted to do a different movie. So that van movie is on the shelf. Like, we're never going to probably touch that again.
Well, Netflix just dropped that Van Girl documentary.
Oh, that's
right?
true, too. The Gabby Petito stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fucking heartbreaking. But, yeah, so that we're probably never going to shoot. But we had wanted to do something else called Better Halves. But by the time the script was done, that budget looked a lot bigger than we thought when we set out to tell the story.
Yes, that is the eternal struggle.
Yeah, but that's more of a dark comedy. I think everything I make somebody's probably going to die, and everything I make.
Hey, it worked out for Hitchcock.
Yeah. but like we would love for that to be the thing that we do. We would actually love to do that in between part 2 and part 3 of Looky-loo, because these movies are so dark and like exhausting that it would be kind of nice to take a little break and do something a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
But for me, honestly,
kills, yeah.
Well, for me, honestly, it's like I don't want to eat my own tail. I want to keep learning. I want to keep challenging myself and doing something new. So like, I hope I don't wind up the one-trick pony that's like, I'm in on found footage for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I love the genre, like, or the subgenre, whatever, I want to do other shit.
Yeah, but you're doing a smart thing that I think is a great lesson for independent filmmakers, which is you're being resourceful, for one. You're not saying this has to be, this isn't my one shot. I think that's the trap and I know I fell into that a lot. It's like, if I'm going to go for it, I have to go all out, and it has to be my full vision, because I might not get another chance. And that's the exact wrong way to look at it.
Yeah.
You have to say, I'm just going to make a movie in the best way that I can with what I have to work with.
I want to hug you right now.
And that's what you guys are doing.
That's exactly it. And I know you're probably saying that out loud, like telling it to yourself as much as you are anybody else, because that is a constant struggle. I was just telling my class the other day that I used to, between every project, I would get I still get stressed out, but for different reasons. But I would tell people close to me that I was upset because I don't know if I'm ever going to get to make another movie again. Mm-hmm. And that I almost never say anymore. Yeah. Like, my dad keeps telling me, he's like one of my biggest supporters, and shout out Brad Zink. But
shouts out.
But he says you need to appreciate the journey.
Definitely.
The journey you're on. Like, keep learning, keep trying to push yourself, and like, that's all that matters. Like, even if you never make it to wherever you wanted to go, you're doing something. Like, if I gave up after Straight Edge Kegger because it didn't wind up being everything I wanted it to be, then I wouldn't be having fun and meeting new people that I like and shit. Like, you just got to keep going out there and trying.
Well, I think it's so hard because I think a lot of independent cinema gets so unfairly judged, right?
Sure.
Because we talked about this on a recent podcast, but we wondered out loud, right? How much do people who consume shitloads of movies, like my mom, really understand the difference between a movie that's sub $50,000 budget and a movie that's even $1 million budget? They both think those are low budget movies. And like, do they really understand the universe of difference between those two things, right? And that the $50,000, they're like, well, that one looks shittier and it sounds shittier and I don't know anyone in it and this and that. And it's like, well, yeah, motherfucker. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people get so scared before they start because they know that those criticisms are going to be there and be fair, right? Because you're making a low budget movie, that they wait for this mythical chance where you can make nothing, but someone's still willing to give you all the resources to eventually do it. And that chasm you can just never cross. Right? Yeah. That's like the hardest part.
I think it's a part of the leftover like myth that started happening with Robert Rodriguez.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that people get inspired by those stories, but it's like if they did their research, they would know that it still cost like $1 million by the time that thing was done to get it out.
And not only that, I mean, really what they should be looking at is, you know, we're of a certain age where it was Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino who blew up with their first films. Of course, Tarantino at the time never really disclosed that he had made a full film that no one ever saw. Right. But I mean, even then it's kind of, well, you know.
And he had two scripts and they're like, I'll sell one and make the other.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, it's kind of, okay, maybe I could do one to burn but the next one has got to be it. So the first one has to be at least close to that quality, right?
Yeah.
And I think people get in their heads about that. And again, you're right. I'm speaking for myself on this because I went through all of that. But what we should be looking at is like David Cronenberg, who for like a decade at least made movies that no one ever even knew about, never even saw. And now people know about them, right? But I mean, these were just like little movies that he was making up in Canada. And he's done so many before Shivers, which is kind of like his big breakout. And a lot of people think of that as maybe his first film. And he had made so much before that, too.
Yeah.
And I think that's the more common story for people that find success. I was just talking with another filmmaker yesterday about Sean Baker. And
people keep bringing up Sean Baker to me.
He's a great example.
That's so funny,
Because you know, he works within his means. And even now that he is a renowned filmmaker, nominated for an Academy Award, could go off and do any studio film. Still chooses to work independently because I think it keeps him sharp. It's the type of films that he wants to make. But he's proven that you can carve out a career for yourself by doing it your way if you are willing to work within your means, within your resources.
Well, I think that's the hardest part, though, is because so many people, especially in horror, they fall back on what has already been done a bunch, and they forget that at low budget, the only value any of us have is ideas.
Yeah.
We can't act, shoot, write, produce, like the big studios most likely, right? We can have cool ideas that we can commit to because we don't have to be beholden to a pitch meeting that's like, this doesn't check the analytics or whatever. We can make whatever the fuck we want. You just have to not be afraid and pre-tar and feather your movie.
Yeah. So Kevin Smith, whether you love his movies or hate him, I think he's a good person to look to. So is Mark Duplass. I'll go back to that in a second. But Kevin Smith said, will over skill. And he said, if I try really hard, I may never be Tarantino, Scorsese, but if I try hard enough, I'll be Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
And I took that very seriously. Like, I want to be the first Jason Zink. Like, I don't want to just emulate some other guys and why would you want to reinvent that wheel, by just copying people? Actually, hold on, going back, I got to tell you something funny. And it's actually, I think a good tip for indies is to not give a shit about reviews. Like, I basically avoid good and bad reviews like the plague. I see some good stuff because Nolan knows I probably need a pat on the back sometimes. So he'll send me good ones, but I said, like, I don't go looking. But somebody sent me a shitty one about Straight Edge Kegger, and they said they should call this movie Brown Room because it's the shitty green room. And they're not fucking wrong. They're not wrong. But it's like, that was a $4.7 million movie. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah. That had a guy who was fucking knighted because he was so good at acting in it.
But the fact that they compared it to Green Room, I think, is a great
That's what some other people said, actually.
As long as the shithead review is funny.
It's funny, yeah. It made me laugh.
I do a lot of work where, like, I'm on YouTube, and you're like, every commenter on YouTube just like a tragedy for your self-esteem waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And I hate the ones that are just like, idiot, fat, like they do that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But as long as they put a little effort into the writing,
yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that's fucking good. They got my ass. Sure. Then I love it, right? That part is funny to me. So, not to laugh at your movie, I've never seen it.
No,
but
yeah,
that is a fucking hilarious.
It's a very it was a funny comment, so I'm down
That's
for
pretty
that.
good.
But I learned pretty early on that it wasn't good for my mental health or my creativity to look at that stuff. Like,
no, because again, then you're doing what the studio wants you to do, which is you're writing for an imaginary audience.
yeah,
Like, this is the thing, you can never fucking predict what an audience wants, right?
No.
You have to make something as good as you can that's interesting to you, and just assume or hope that any other group of people in the universe will be in that same headspace somewhere.
And by the way, there are people out there that think Parasite sucks.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Which
you're
breaks
never
my
going
heart.
to win.
Dude, every movie.
Yeah,
every
any
movie
movie.
someone
Yeah.
thinks it sucks.
I always tell my students, I'm like, think of your favorite movie, go to IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, and you're going to see people shitting on it.
There's someone who's
Like
given that
Jaws.
movie a 1 star.
Yeah.
That's the one I was like, if you don't like Jaws, I would literally not be in the same place as you. I'd be like, you're just untrustworthy and make bad choices. Like, I can get over a lot of shit that I would not.
It is.
That's the only unimpeachable movie to me.
It is tough, though, what you were saying about, like, the general audience member, like somebody just clicking on Tubi TV on streaming, not knowing what indie is really like or what they're getting themselves into, and weighing it against, like, Thor. You know? Like,
Yes.
It is a struggle we all have to deal
Well, not
with,
even
but-
that. Not even competing against the studios, which you're right, we are to a degree. I think there is a discerning audience member out there that knows actually seek out lower budget because
100%.
that's what they like. That's what they're into. And you might have someone that's just scrolling by and like, oh, this is next to any Marvel movie, and I'll take a fly on it and see what I get into. And they're like, disappointed because it's not to production quality standards that they're used to. But there is also this thing, and trust me, my long-winded point will get back to your movie, where there is an expectation within low-budget horror to do certain tropes and certain things too. And I think, there was probably a temptation for you guys to do the more 80s style voyeuristic, like, okay, we're spying on a woman taking a shower. We need, the money shot here of, some kind of titillating skin.
What did Harry Connick Jr., serial killer, say in Copycat, the squirrel cover?
It's been a long time since I've
He
seen
said he wanted
Copycat.
Sigourney Weaver to mail him some of her squirrel covers.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
But,
Sorry.
okay.
I know you're into serial killers. Copycat, Sigourney Weaver. That's just a weird ass movie.
I've never seen that. I don't think I've seen it.
You could have done the cynical 80s thing where you're putting the woman in the shower on the poster, and you're promising like you're going to get to see, a naked woman, and that's like part of the marketing aspect of getting people to click on that tile and watch it. But you guys did avoid that because that wasn't material to the storytelling. But I think there are a lot of low budget filmmakers who are like, and look, we're not above it either. We're probably doing it with our movie as well, like where you have to.
What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Ours is a high-minded.
High-minded. It's
to
called
dissect the human
Mr.
soul.
Cream Jeans hidey hole. So
When
that's
you say it like that. Yeah, if you're gonna put that tone on it.
And I don't have anything against that. Like, we're eventually going to do a podcast about Sleepaway Camp 2, which is full of full frontal nudity. Nothing against it, but I'm just saying, like, Looky-loo, there is a scene where the killer walks in and there's a character that he's stalking that's in the shower. You could have done that a much different way that would have promised the audience, hey, you're at least going to get to see some skin. And that could have been a cynical marketing decision. But, who cares? How many movies are like that?
Right.
That you can go watch
It's
anyway.
different now, too, because our dads didn't just have the infinite amount of porn in their pockets.
That's
we
true.
have. That always thinks a weird thing.
Well-
like, our dads and uncles, they'd like see a tit in a movie. They're like, remember those? Like bumping each other, right?
And
Like,
not only do we want our actors to be comfortable, like
Right.
that actually does matter, but we actually realize that could be something new. Like, he covers people up.
yeah, I noticed
Right?
that too. Yeah.
Like, that adds something to his character
Right.
that you don't normally see.
Yeah.
Like, he has some weird sense of moral code.
There's a
even
lot
though
wrong with
he's
this
doing
guy, yeah.
Yes,
he saves it for whatever that mannequin thing was.
But if you were beholden to even like a small distributor, they probably would have insisted, like Roger Corman would have insisted, that you show nudity.
Yeah.
But see,
in this movie.
that's the battle we're all going to be in soon. is now all these studios have algorithms, right? The Ethan Maya Hawke thing this week about casting actors based on how many social media followers they have. Mm-hmm. And it's just a reality that if they're spending all their time building up social media following, that's less time they're going to spend acting and training, right? That's just not, you just don't have unlimited time to do all of this shit, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were telling her if she deleted her Instagram, she'd have to work with shittier actors that were like influencers, because that's this magical threshold number they have to get, right?
Sure, yeah.
Or if you're going to make a low budget horror movie, it's got to have 13 kills, 5.2 tits, this, that, and the other. And we're going to start getting handed these dossiers.
Yeah.
Right? Or we're going to hand our movies to someone and they're going to say, this does not check enough of these boxes. That is the reality
that's already happening right now. We've gotten a little bit of that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And it's going to get worse and worse as they micro fracture kind of cultural attentions, right? Mm-hmm. Like we used to have monoliths of society, like the movie every week or the TV shows on Thursday night, whatever. Now as we fraction down and down and down, how are you guys thinking? Because I know we talk about this a lot. What are your thoughts on how do you protect something like Looky-loo from being infected by those things? Because at a certain point, we're all going to be confronted with what are we trying to do as storytellers versus do we want to make any money on that so we can keep telling stories? How do you approach that divide?
One, I grew up obsessed with punk rock music.
Yeah.
And so I've been a big fan of like DIY, like no gods, no managers shit for a long time. And I think that that's just baked into my DNA now. So we're going to do what the fuck we want to do.
Yeah.
And if you want to pass on it, then fine. I think you'll regret it later and we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
But I will say, so I used to see it as a weakness that like we didn't have financial support. Like we don't have some big company who's like, love your last movie, here's $1 million. But it's actually kind of empowering and liberating because we don't need them to keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
And we're beholden to no one.
That's the trick, man. There is no here's your big ass movie check without here are
Strings
the shackles
attached.
that you are attached
Yes.
to. Yeah. It does not exist.
Right.
And not to open up a whole other can of worms, but I think stuff like what you're doing and that punk rock ethos is going to be more and more valuable as art is becoming more synthetic. You know, like you're
AI
the AI aspect of it. Yeah. And again, like that's a whole other topic for another thing. But
yeah,
I like, you know, the more that I see online, because scrolling through your feed, for the longest time, the appeal was like, oh, someone just made this on their phone, right? Now you don't know what's real and what's not. And what you're doing, like AI could not do that.
Right.
I don't think it could do it at all, ever. And so that's going to become more and more valuable.
Yeah.
And, you know, we might strive to have these greater production values, but now we are starting to come up against like, well, is it even real or not? You know, as you increase your production value. So
See, that's the thing, though. Audiences are watching more and more shit that has worse production value.
That's what I'm saying.
With TikTok and this and that, like the more polished it is, the more people are turning on it now.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So there is a weird, the people in charge have more of these algorithms. And the first time you meet a rich dentist who's like, I might want to, you know, make movies, that'll be fun, and they'll invest in you. They're going to go to Google and it's going to tell them this is what you need those guys to deliver. It's just going to be something we're all going to have to come up with an answer for at some point, right? And again, you have to hope and pray that your movie's strong enough to stand on its own and that people will sit and experience the movie and find value enough in that. And that's the thing I'm more afraid of losing, right? And there is just this uphill battle that if guys like us are just fighting it out and then we're just trying to throw it out on the internet and praying voices will find it, that sucks to think of all the stuff people just miss, right? Like we're watching movies all the fucking time. I'm sure all of us in this room. We watch so many fucking movies. I am shocked by how many amazing movies I still find.
Oh, me too.
And you're like, how did I not find this in the first 40 years of my life? And there's just so much out there, right?
Yeah.
And I think Looky-loo's such an interesting example of this because you can see immediately, like it's pretty easy to imagine the 3 or 4 studio notes you would have gotten. Because I used to be a producer's assistant, and that was my thing. I'd be like, this script's great. And she's like, well, this. Tom Cruise would never do this movie. I'm like, Tom Cruise, what the fuck does that have to do? It's about a homeless guy in Canada. What does that have to do with anything? Right? And it's like, you just can imagine how these things die by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh gosh, it sucks. It sucks that people will put eyes on your movie after not supporting you throughout the entire process. then you say, here's the movie that we made, and they say, oh, can you go back and reshoot it with a lot more gore? No, like this is what are you talking about?
We were there. We would have thought of that.
And we could have. It's a movie that's very segmented, so you could go back and reshoot all this stuff. But we were like, no, this is how we wanted it to be. So this is what it is.
And again, you can get there. Those movies are a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the other thing we talk about, and what I appreciate about yours is it'll look different. We go through the horror tab on Tubi and just scroll pretty quick. And you would be shocked how much those things all fucking look alike.
Oh, yeah.
The fucking blood
I don't think
red
I would
title.
be shocked at this point.
Yeah, the same poster, right? And it's like the same fucking promise. Here's a hot person who can't deliver lines getting killed by someone in a mask. Probably some tits. Not enough, but like some. And you're like, you just fucking scroll. And it's like, what are the things that pull a movie out of that, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's a great title, a great poster, right? Something like that. I think you guys have that thing that will separate it from all that other stuff. And again, those people might end up making more money, right? In the short term. But I have to believe that creating something real will matter at some point, right? Like, 'cause I think that's the thing we all have to your dad point, shout out Brad.
I can't believe you remembered his name.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Brad Zink, dude.
That's amazing.
So, to Brad's point though, it's like the best fatherly advice. Like my son now is desperate to be an NBA player when he grows up. And I haven't had the adult bandwidth to be like, how do I break this to my young white son? Chances are not great for you, right? Like,
we'll see. Don't give up hope.
Well, he's like, well, if not that, the NFL. And I was like, oof. Okay, we got a lot of talks to have. But again, what I'm trying to teach him, because he's like, well, what can I do to get better? It's like, well, just go practice, man. Like, learn to love to practice things and get better at what you're not good at, right? That intentional practice, right? Like, you can't go left. So just all summer, just go left on kids in pickup games and learn to fall in love with playing, and that by practicing and getting better, you love the game more.
Yeah.
And I think hearing your dad's advice harken back to that I'm saying to my kid. And it is, if you don't just love the idea of creating a movie and pulling people together and being here filming, as hard as it is, as annoying as it is, as much as my wife wants to kill me when we tear our house apart, right? I love that journey, right?
It has
and you
to be,
you can't live your whole life in fear of, I have to do what will make us money or make us famous, and you're chasing the wrong thing. Eventually you have to plant your flag and like, this is us, and we hope you like it too.
Yeah, it can't be a means to an end.
Yeah.
There's so many easier, better ways to make money.
Yeah.
No one should get into filmmaking for money.
100%. No, I will admit that I'm talking about it like on set I'm just happy-go-lucky guy. I'm not. This stuff stresses me.
You just skate into scene. You're like, "What's up, dog?
Yeah.
We shooting this or what?" Yeah.
I stroll in 2 hours late, man. I don't give a shit. No, it's a lot of fucking hard work, and it's really stressful. And I've had people that I love be like, "Do you really like this?" And I instantly like panic. Like, I love this.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's nothing like having like a family member, like or like a friend from college, like, "I'll come help on your set." And they're like, "You're doing this for how long today?"
Yeah.
Right?
This is actually
this
work.
Is all day you just sit here?
But the fact that it is hard and it is challenging is what keeps you engaged and what makes you love it.
100%.
Because it is like, I think filmmaking is the ultimate team sport, at least for nerdy guys like me. But it's, the harder the better is what I want to say. I might not admit to that once we're
Phrasing?
But well, the more difficult, the better. But it is such a challenge, and it can be so stressful. Like, I know exactly what you're saying, but the more that you go through it, you do get kind of like battle hardened, and then just let's go again.
After we finished shooting the principal photography for Straight Edge Kegger, it was 11 days of shooting. People were crashing on air mattresses in my house. The whole place was torn up. And I went back to work the next Monday, and somebody said, how was it? And I said it was some of the worst moments of my life.
Yeah.
But some of the best moments of my life as well. Like things
they just made this weird sandwich, right?
Yep.
Just stacked on top of each other. Yeah.
And I think that once I recognized that, I'm like, okay, you can push through those bad times because there's going to be some great moment that like is worth it all, So that's, I think, just enjoying the process as much as you possibly can and challenging yourself. Like, that's all it's about. And like the collaboration, like people take that for granted a lot of times, like especially as the director. Like, you wear a lot of hats, you take a lot on yourself, but like I love working with other people and figuring this out and creating something.
Yeah,
like,
those people aren't going to make a lot because
they burn out. People burn out on them. Like
exactly,
sure,
because that's not the true motivation for doing it. It is working with other people, and it's more of an ego trip. Typically.
Yes. Yeah. They just want to have the name in lights.
Yeah.
They want. He's pointing at you.
I've seen it before. It's horrible.
I tell my students, and I preface it like, I'm not saying this to scare you. I hope this empowers you. Like, you will never be Tarantino. You might make better films than Tarantino, but those days are over.
Yeah.
They're like, you are not going to be rock star status.
We have hated the auteur
filmmaker.
theory for a long time now.
Right? So you got to care about telling stories and working with your friends and making something cool. Like, that's what you need to focus on, nothing else.
Yeah, it is amazing how many people in pursuit of, I want to be the man, don't realize that if you just have all these other minds around, how much better they make you look.
100%.
And like, read the press releases. The director still gets all the fucking credit.
Yeah.
Right? The director and the lead actor still get all the fucking credit. Mm-hmm. You don't read a lot of variety releases that talk about costumes and shit. Even if they're doing a great job and are integral to the character.
Sure, yeah.
But you got to fucking let people help you, man. And they will make you look so much better. And that goes for any job on a set.
Yeah.
And again, we've been pretty lucky. We haven't had too many, trouble with people coming in. Most people seem to get that, right?
Yeah.
A question for you, we ask a lot of indie filmmakers this. How do you handle the oh fuck moment on set, the big issue that goes down and needs to be resolved when you have limited time, resources, days, all that kind of stuff?
I think this is not tooting my own horn. I'm not perfect, but I do think I've got this ability to be flexible and assume that something's going to go wrong. So I can usually kind of like turn and adapt in a way and come to some new thing that might even be better, or at least equal to what we had intended. I think the thing that I have a harder time with, because I'm doing so much, is like noticing something going wrong in the moment. Sometimes I'll go back.
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think I encounter that
slow
way
boiling
more.
Frog. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Where suddenly we wind up having to have a whole pickup day.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I just got to get this done.
Yes.
Don't make a big deal out of it. Get through it.
You put the producer hat on more than the director hat.
Yeah.
We got to make our day. Like, we're behind.
Yeah.
That keeps happening to me. Not frequently.
That's just a condition of the circumstances of the low budget world.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, this was probably a good point to pivot. So we always have two questions that we definitely ask on these. One is what would you do with a blank check, basically. If someone said, okay,
any movie, any IP.
Yeah.
What would you do? Sorry, I'm just dying over here.
Yeah, please don't die.
No, it's fine.
It's great for the
It's because I've given up tobacco products, and my body's like, where is all this stuff? I don't have anything to suppress it down. But yeah.
But it has to be. But it can't be like I take a $10 million and make 10 movies, right? It has to be like one person.
Could be. This is something we didn't anticipate when we started the pod. Everybody
goes there.
Yeah.
Every indie filmmaker just goes, "Oh, I've got shit I would make," right?
Yeah.
Everyone says that, which we were not expecting. So I was expecting everyone to be like, Event Horizon. Right? Like, I want to remake something like that. Yeah.
An IP, yeah.
Or like, I want to bring Friday the 13th back. But 9 out of the 10 people we interview all say they want to make their own shit.
Which I love that. That's great.
I guess for me, I've had this other question. The last time I was asked this, just knee-jerk reaction, I said, I guess I'd make funny games too.
Whoa, okay.
Because it's like my favorite movie. But I think realistically, I'd want to take over for Wes Craven on the Scream franchise. I would rather go.
You want to go back to what?
To 5.
To 5. Okay,
yes,
yeah.
I would pick up where he left off, because I think that there's been some missteps, and I love that franchise so much. So that'd probably be my
weird.
answer.
They're at another like hard reset because of like real world shit interfering. Where like the new girls we built up are now gone.
Right.
We're just bringing back everyone.
I've got my fingers crossed. I'm not optimistic, but I've got my fingers crossed that it's going to be something super rad and we could all be excited.
Yeah, well, what is it? They announced Joel McHale and everyone was like, "Oh, cool! So he's going to be the killer."
Yeah,
and then they're like, we'll just bring back everyone. Matthew Lillard's in it, and Neve Campbell's back, and it's like, okay.
It is sad that it's not going to be the original Mark. Everybody assumed that Mark, the cop from part 3, was her husband, and I'm not sure why it's not going to be him, and instead it's going to be, whatever.
That's interesting.
It's tough, man, with Scream, and especially the meta franchise. Like, it feels like you guys should be more on point and more examined, than a normal franchise.
Yeah,
but so the other question we always ask: what piece of advice would you give? The most important piece of advice you would give to an aspiring young filmmaker?
Just try. I keep seeing it with my students. I've got some really smart students that are really fucking talented, and they are so scared to start and fail. And I'm just like, start.
Yeah.
Please start. Do not wait. You know what? I said I was going to come back to Mark Duplass. Every indie filmmaker should watch his South by Southwest keynote.
That's classic. Yeah,
that is so inspiring and
the cavalry is not coming.
The cavalry is not coming.
There is no cavalry.
Because so many people are like, I'm just going to write a script and one day somebody's going to give me $10 million. No, man. You got to start.
I've been trying that for a while, guys. Don't do that.
Yeah. Like, hey, don't get me wrong. It costs nothing but time to write, right? So, like, you should be writing like crazy, but you need to start finding in it. Maybe you don't want to be a director. Maybe you just want to be a writer. Then find some people to get your scripts made into something. Like,
that's the thing. Yeah. If I could teach or build a curriculum, a film school curriculum, I mean, it would be much more practical and getting into those aspects of it, like the real way that you have to build your little pirate ship.
Yep.
Because that's the only way you're going to get it done. And I think a lot of people, they want to focus on the part they love, which is making the story, crafting the images and all that. And unfortunately, you probably shouldn't get into it unless you're willing to take on, or at least be social enough to find the people that are willing to take on those other parts to get it done, because just being so brilliant that magically you're going to be noticed by the powers that be, it's just not possible. So
it's brutal, man.
And you can be brilliant, but you're not going to get the lottery ticket.
Yeah, that's a part of the reason I like teaching this 90s independent cinema course is because a lot of them are film students, not just random students who are interested in film. And so I show them, I'm like, look, Kevin Smith, who built a successful career, he's the first to admit that if he released Clerks now, it wouldn't play Sundance.
Yeah.
Like, there were 400 submissions that year, and now there's thousands upon thousands.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So things are different now.
You have to have an entrepreneurial mindset.
You do.
Well, it's tough. Like, my writing partner and I took maybe 6 weeks off around like Christmas into this new year. Coming back has been horrifying. And we started our first draft of our new script this week, right? Like, from page 1, from blank. And we both are just like, we suck at writing. We don't have it anymore. We can't do it. Because we're doing like the vomit draft.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, we're like, we got to go back and fix this. What if someone sees it? What if the joke, like the jig's up? They know we suck. And it's like, don't go back and tinker. Don't just fucking finish it.
Yeah.
And get forward. And then go back and fix. But like,
I'm a huge fan of the vomit draft.
Even all this time in, every time I start a project, you're like, that's it. I can't do it anymore. I used up the last bit of magic I ever had. I suck.
You just got to flex those muscles.
But yeah, exactly, right? And it's that fear that pauses things, but you just have to fucking sit down and do it.
Yeah.
And be willing to get over that, right? Because that never goes away.
Perseverance is a skill that I don't think as an indie you can make it without.
No.
And you can't
have to have it.
Can't really teach that, but I'm trying to inspire that in students. I'm kind of trying to break them down early.
Yes.
And say, like, here's all the mistakes that we have all learned, like, collectively in the indie world.
Well, and that's the thing, because you said it earlier, they're afraid to fail, and everybody's, for the most part, afraid to fail. Like, that's the big barrier. So if you just get them to fail early, that fear might subside.
You got to be comfortable with failure.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot succeed without failure.
And nothing's ever truly a failure either.
Yes, yeah.
You know, it's always going to be worse in your mind what could happen than what the actual situation ends up being. Even if it doesn't go the way that you think, and you might perceive it as, this didn't quite go right. It's not a failure.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we better give Jason a little bit of time to plug his movie.
Yeah, plug the movie, dude.
So Looky-loo right now is out on physical. It's Blu-ray and a limited VHS with Scream Team releasing. In a couple months, we're actually getting a VHS run through Lunch Meat VHS.
Oh, no shit.
great.
We are very excited about that.
The rise of VHS, I did not predict.
Oh, yeah.
I got vinyl while it was back, and I was like, VHS, really? But it's kind of nice to see, man.
Kind of nice. It's like, that's
Oh,
bread and butter, man.
You're like a real collector, right?
I'm a
I used to
VHS
be.
head.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
that's
I'm a
awesome,
tape
man.
head for sure.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah. I'm living my best life right now with the tapes. But yeah, so that's what it is right now. In a couple months, it's going to go to rentals and then eventually to a streaming platform.
Nice.
We're sad that we haven't heard from like a Shudder or a Screambox, but we think they'll regret it when part 2 comes out.
Yeah, you're going to learn, buddy. I don't even know what camera to look at, which one you executives are on. You're going to learn today. No, hey, man, we had a friend who just got something through. Like, it takes a while.
It takes a long
That's true.
time.
It can take a long time, man.
Yeah, it's kind of funny with Straight Edge Kegger, actually. It came like that to me. But I bet it actually took a long time. We were on the film festival circuit for like a year with that movie, letting buzz generate and stuff before it went on there.
There's a movie that I was following. I still haven't seen it, and it was on my list because it showed up in some festivals we were at a year or two ago, and I just saw that it got a distribution.
Oh,
deal.
really?
And it's going to be coming out in I think maybe a small theatrical run, but and it looks great. Like, finally, I just saw a legit trailer for it.
Okay.
And this movie,
Another one we played with 2 years ago. They were just starting to debut. It just got announced. It's
right.
coming.
Yeah. So it is
okay.
a multi-year process. Like, again, this movie was probably in production 4 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. And it's just, there's so much out there, and the process takes so long. And it will come to you guys. And I think you're doing a really smart thing strategically of just moving forward with the sequels, because that will all build on itself.
Yeah,
and
we're
then
hoping so.
Provide more value to the original. Because people want to check it out.
Yeah. Like
Or package them together, right?
Yeah.
2 movies for one.
Like we think a lot of people are going to watch part 2 and really like it, and then go back and watch part
definitely.
1, that kind of thing. Yeah,
I think
we're
so.
hoping. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a unique experience. I think people that are into that kind of movie will find how shockingly underserved they've been. I watch movies all the fucking time for work in this. I cannot think of too many that are in this area.
Oh, thank you, man.
So I think
awesome.
it's a very fun and unique experience for fans who want that kind of realistic tone, right? The only one that I kept thinking of, again, was from the fucking 80s. Henry, that was the end of the 80s.
You know, a lot of people keep comparing us, Looky-loo Part 1 to the Poughkeepsie tapes. And
yes.
And I'm a huge Poughkeepsie tapes fan, but it does that mockumentary thing that kind of takes, you know what I mean? So I think they're very different movies, but I'm honored to be
There's an extra layer
tapes.
of what happens with the footage. In
Yes,
that one.
exactly.
You know, I got to say, just before we go, we recently watched Soderbergh's Presence, and I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of Soderbergh, and I think part of the reason that I didn't enjoy Presence as much as maybe I would have otherwise was because I was like, Looky-loo kind of did it better.
I knew you were going to say
damn!
We heard that a few times. When I first got sent that trailer, actually, for a moment, I was a little heartbroken because I was like, this footage looks just like part 2. Like, this is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
But it's such a different story, and I love Soderbergh,
Yeah, no, it's different characters, different setup, but it does have that, like, and there's supernatural, of course, in that film. So, and yours is way more like gritty and verite. But just the fact that, like, you're from the perspective of one quote unquote character or entity,
like an entity,
and you kind of have to interpret what's going on through that POV, and then you learn things about whose frame of mind or perspective you might be in, and I thought your film did such a better job of, like, teaching us what this character is learning and how they are.
I saw your movie and was pissed that now my short in titty's not going to happen. I was pitching a short called In Titty.
Oh, is this like a
In Titty.
Is this like a Sean Connery Celebrity Jeopardy style?
No, it was a real pitch. If you go back, I really wrote it in my notebook with like too much earnestness. Yeah, with the tit capitalized.
Good God.
And I was like, well, now that he's seen Looky-loo, I'll never get to do In Titty. And that's just a real heartbreak.
Sorry to do that to you.
They just did it better than me.
Well, we should start the cinematic universe of But no, thanks for coming on, Jason. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you guys so much. It's been a fucking blast.
Good, man.
Well, yeah, welcome back anytime. I know we have at least one other movie we're thinking about if you caught the hat in the show. Would you like to tell everyone one more time where they can find your stuff online?
Yeah, Weird on Top Pictures for Instagram. We also have a TikTok that barely does anything.
Same.
It's called Weird on TikTok, and I don't think I've posted in like months.
That's almost as good as Entity.
Yeah, but you can find me on Facebook and anywhere else. You can reach out to us on our website as well, and please go pick up the movie because all that money just goes filtered into part 2 and 3.
Hell yeah.
Get Looky-loo, all of you. Sorry, I don't know why I yelled. That was rude.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. No! Is this how Brad Zink talks?
No.
No!
Not at all.
We'll have him do a tag at the end. All right, we'll see you guys Monday for another new movie.